Chapter 29, Occupation and Housing Are Serious Matters. Klein, trying not to be weird, asked with genuine curiosity, "What does a fortune teller do?" Your question is inaccurate. But what powers do you get when you take the fortune teller potion? Dunn Smith shook his head and smiled, his gray eyes and face turned away from the red moon, hidden in the shadows. Astrology, card reading, pendumming, vision, and many things like that. Of course, you don't take potions and immediately know and master them. Potions just give you the qualifications and ability to learn them. In the absence of direct means of confrontation, well, as you can imagine, ritual magic requires too much preparation for an encounter, and therefore, correspondingly, the fortune teller would be more knowledgeable and professional in his occult knowledge than the voyeur. That sounds like what I'm looking for. It's the lack of direct engagement that makes people hesitate, and the Night Goddess Church has a high probability of no subsequent sequence. Church should refer to the church headquarters Serenity Church. Low sequence of direct enemy means may not be comparable to firearms. Klein fell silent, the scales in his mind swinging from side to side, sometimes peeping at the secret person, sometimes fortune teller. As for the body collector, he has no consideration. Dunn Smith smiled at this and said, "Don't trust to choose. Let me know on Monday morning whether you want to choose one or the other, or just drop it. There will be no additional opinion within our watchmen. Calm yourself and ask your heart." With that, he took off his hat, bowed slightly, and walked slowly past Klein toward the stairs. Klein did not speak, did not give an immediate answer, did not salute, did not look. Although he had always hoped to become the extraordinary, when the opportunity really came, it was still full of hesitation. The lack of sequence after the extraordinary of all kinds of out of control. The credibility of the Emperor Russell's diary. Making people crazy and degenerate unreal whispers, mixed into a swamp of obstruction. He took a deep breath and then exhaled slowly. Comparable to students who are neither good nor bad applying to college. Klein laughed at herself, restrained her divergent thoughts, quietly opened the door, returned home, and lay down in bed. He lay there, eyes open, quietly looking at the bottom of the bed stained with a faint crimson. The noise of drunks lurching past outside the window, and a carriage speeding along an empty street in the distance, did not destroy the quiet of the night, but made it deeper and deeper. Klein's emotions settled down, remembering all kinds of past events on the earth. Her father who likes to exercise and always speaks loudly. Her mother who has chronic illness but likes to do things for herself. And her close friends who grew up together and evolved from playing football and basketball to playing the game Mahjong. Think of that as blurred the appearance of the confession failure object. These are like a quiet flowing river, not many ripples, not so deeply hurt, but silently flooded the heart. Perhaps only when it is lost can one appreciate it. When the crimson fades, the sky is burning, and the yellow is emerging. Klein has made a choice. He got up and went to the public washroom to wash his face and freshen himself up. And then, taking a sow of paper money, he went to Mrs. Wendy's and bought 8 pounds of rye bread for 9 pence to replenish the main meal he had eaten the night before. The price of bread is beginning to stabilize. After breakfast, Benson gave his assessment as he changed his clothes. It's Sunday, and he and Melissa finally have a chance to rest. Klein, who was already dressed in a formal suit, sat in a chair, looking through the back issue of yesterday's newspaper, and was surprised to say, "Here is an advertisement for a house for rent, 3 Wendell Street, North District, single-family house, 2 floors, 6 rooms upstairs, 3 bathrooms, 2 large balconies. Downstairs a dining room, a living room, a kitchen, 2 bathrooms, 2 guest rooms, and an underground storage room. Outside the house, There is 2 acres of private lawn in front of it, and a small garden behind it, which can be let for 1, 2 or 3 years at 1 and 6 hours a week. If you are interested, call M. Gushev at No. 16 Rue de Champagne. That's our goal in the future. Benson put on his black half-top hat and smiled. The rent in the newspapers is high. The Tinian Housing Improvement Company has cheaper options that are not much worse. Why not go to the Tinian Working Class Housing Improvement Association? Melissa stepped out of the booth with her old gauze hat, a lightweight off-white dress. That had been sewn several times, but was still the most handy. She was quiet and reserved, but she could not hide the breath of youth. Benson laughed and said, "From did you hear about the Tinian Working Class Housing Improvement Association? Jenny, Mrs. Rocher, or your best friend Selena?" Melissa looked aside and whispered back, "Mrs. Rocher. I ran into her last night when I was washing up, and she asked Klein about the interview, and I told her a little bit, and she suggested the Tinian Working Class Housing Improvement Association." Benson saw Klein also look puzzled, smiling and shaking his head. "The Sissa Housing Association for the Poor. The underclass to be exact. And the houses they build and renovate are basically the communal bathroom type. And they only offer 3 options: 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom. And you want to continue living in something like that. The Tingwin City Improvement Housing Company has the same business as them, but it also provides options for the lower middle class. Frankly speaking, we are a little better than the lower middle class, but a little worse than the real middle class. It is not the salary problem. It is the lack of time to accumulate." Klein realizes, puts away her newspaper, takes her hat, and stands up. "Then let's go. I remember the Tinian City Improvement Housing Corporation on Daffodil Street. They're called the 5% Charity, like the Tinian Working Class Housing Improvement Association," Benson said as he opened the door. "You know why?" "I don't know." Klein picks up her cane and walks beside Melissa, and the girl with black hair, slicked down to the vest, also followed with a nod. Benson stepped out. "These housing improvement associations and companies are formed under the influence of Bakeland, and their funds are raised in 3 ways. One is through charitable funds. The other is through the declaration of good loans from the Public Service Loan Commissioners of the government at an annual interest of only 4%. The third is through commercial investment, by charging a certain rent and giving each other a return of 5% per year. That's why it's called 5% charity." Pedal, pedal, pedal. The 3 brother and sister went down the stairs, slowly walking to the Narcissima Street. They plan to determine the house before they go to the current landlord, Mr. French, lest there is no way to live there, and here have to move out of the situation. "I heard Selena talk about a purely charitable improvement housing company," Melissa said as if thinking. Benson laughed and said, "Yes, Sir De Vere's endowment, the De Vere Trust, is that he builds flats for the working class and provides special management of the property, but charges very low rents, and yet the requirements are very strict." "You don't sound too fond of it," Klein, keenly aware, asked with a smile. "No, I have great respect for Sir De Vere, but I don't think he knows what it's like to live in a real pauper, and the requirements for his apartment are like Parsons' hopes, so unrealistic that, for example, major vaccinations must be given, bathrooms must be cleaned in turn, houses must not be sublet or used for business, litter must not be dropped, children cannot play in the corridors, and so on." "Goddess, does he wish to make gentlemen and ladies of everyone?" Benson replied in his usual way. Klein frowned in disbelief. "It doesn't sound like there's any problem. All good requests." "HMM." Melissa nodded in agreement. Benson turned his head, glanced at them, and smiled. "Perhaps I have protected you too well, and have not really seen the life of the poor. You think they have the money to get the main vaccine?" The line for free charity medical organizations can go 3 months. Do you think their jobs are stable, not temporary? If you can't share the house, charge a certain fee, and then move out again when you lose your job. And many women make a living by mending clothes and burning matchboxes at home, which is a commercial application. So are they going to be kicked out? Most of the poor are doing everything they can to make ends meet. And do you think they will have time to discipline their children and keep them from playing in the corridors? I guess we can only lock them in the house until they are 7 or 8 years old and send them to a place that is willing to accept child labor. Benson described it without many adjectives, which made Klein's blood run cold. Is this the life of the underclass? Beside him, Melissa also fell silent for a long time before she said, in a misty voice, after we moved down the street, Jenny didn't want me to go to her house anymore. Let's hope her father recovers from his injuries and finds a stable job again. But I've seen too many drunks who have used alcohol ever since. Benson let out a heavy sneer. Klein didn't know what to say. Melissa seemed to be in the same state. And the 3 siblings walked silently down Daffodil Street and found the Tingen City Improvement Housing Company. They were greeted by a middle-aged man with a kind smile. No suit, no hat, a white shirt, and a black waistcoat. You may call me Scott, but what kind of accommodation do you want? He glanced at Klein's silver-encrusted walking stick and smiled more warmly. Klein looked at the eloquent Benson and motioned for him to answer. Benson spoke very directly, terraced houses. Scott flipped through the papers and files in his hand, and the corners of his mouth. Turn it upward. At the moment there are 5 that are not rented. To be honest, we are more for real housing difficulties. 6, 8, even 10. -1 workers and their children crowded into one room. Not many row houses. One is into Daffodil Street. One is in the north. One is in the east. The rent ranges from 12 to 16 souls a week. You can read the details. He pushed the documents to Benson, Klein, and Melissa. After browsing through it, the 3 siblings looked at each other and pointed to a certain place on the paper. Let's look at Daffodil Street first. Benson began, and Klein and Melissa nodded along. This neighborhood is kind of familiar territory.